The first-class cabin was quiet until Captain Douglas Sterling stepped out from the cockpit. He pointed at a black man in a plain T-shirt sitting in seat 1A with a small boy beside him. "Sir, there's a technical issue with your seat assignment. I'll need you to move to the back of the aircraft." To Sterling, the man was just another single father who didn't belong in luxury. What he didn't know, this passenger had purchased the entire airline that morning. When the plane landed, only one of them would walk away with their career intact. Marcus Reed had signed the papers at 9 that morning. $3 billion to acquire Pacific West Airlines. The lawyers shook his hand, the board members smiled for photographs, and by 10:30, he owned every plane, every gate, every uniform with the company logo stitched on it. By noon, he was standing in the terminal wearing a faded gray T-shirt and jeans, holding his son's hand. Noah tugged at his arm. "Dad, why aren't we going through the special door? The one with the free cookies?" Marcus knelt down to meet his son's eyes. "Because today we're just regular passengers, like everyone else." "But we're not regular," Noah said, confused. "Nobody needs to know that." Marcus smiled and squeezed the boy's shoulder. "Think of it like a secret mission. We're spies." Noah's face lit up. "Spies? What are we spying on?" "Everything." That was the point. Marcus had built his tech empire by understanding systems from the inside. He had started with nothing, raised by a single mother in a 2-room apartment in Baltimore, wearing secondhand clothes to school, eating government cheese. Now he owned companies, buildings, and as of this morning, an airline. But he knew that the moment people recognized his face or his name, everything changed. The service became perfect. The smiles became brighter. The problems disappeared. He wanted to see what Pacific West Airlines looked like when no one was watching. When the customer was just a black man in a T-shirt traveling with his kid. They boarded early. First class was nearly empty. Marcus found their seats, 1A and 1B, window and middle, and helped Noah buckle in. "This is so cool," Noah whispered, pressing his face against the window. "The seats are huge." Marcus settled in beside him. For a moment, everything felt simple. Just a father and son taking a trip together. No board meetings, no quarterly reports, no photographers asking him to pose next to politicians he barely knew. Then Captain Douglas Sterling walked out of the cockpit. Sterling was 61 years old with 30 years of flight experience and a face that suggested he had never once doubted a decision he made. His uniform was pressed to perfection. His silver hair was combed back with military precision. He moved through first class the way a general inspects troops, nodding at passengers who met his approval, ignoring those who did not. His eyes landed on Marcus. Sterling stopped walking. His gaze moved from Marcus's T-shirt to his worn sneakers, then to Noah's small backpack covered in superhero stickers. Something shifted in the captain's expression. Not quite disgust, something closer to confusion, as if he had found a stain on an otherwise clean tablecloth. "Excuse me." Sterling's voice was polite but cold. He stepped closer, blocking the aisle. "Can I see your boarding passes?" Marcus looked up. "Is there a problem?" "Just a routine check." It was not routine. Marcus had flown enough to know that captains did not personally check boarding passes in first class. That was the flight attendant's job. But he reached into his pocket and handed over the passes without argument. Sterling studied them for a long moment. Too long. As if he expected to find something wrong. A young flight attendant appeared behind him. Sarah Mitchell, according to her name tag. She was 28, professional, with the kind of careful posture that suggested she was still trying to prove herself. "Captain, is everything all right?" she asked. Sterling handed her the boarding passes. "Check these." Sarah looked at the passes, then at Marcus and Noah. Her expression flickered with something, embarrassment maybe, or discomfort. She checked the seat numbers, checked them again. "These are valid, Captain." Seats 1A and 1B, purchased at full fare. Sterling did not move. There must be a system error. Sir, I can pull up the purchase confirmation if you'd like. It's all in order. I said check again. Sarah's face reddened, but she kept her voice steady. Captain Sterling, the tickets are legitimate. The passenger paid full price for both seats. Sterling turned back to Marcus. The pretense of politeness was fading now. Sir, I'm afraid we have a technical issue. Weight distribution. We need to redistribute passengers for balance. I'm going to have to move you to another seat. Marcus felt Noah's small hand grip his arm. The boy could sense the tension even if he did not understand it. Weight distribution, Marcus repeated. His voice was calm, almost gentle. That's correct. And this affects only our seats? No one else in first class? Sterling's jaw tightened. That's correct. Across the aisle, a heavy-set white man in an expensive suit was sprawled across two seats, his belly straining against his shirt buttons. He had not been asked to move. Marcus understood exactly what was happening. He had understood it from the moment Sterling's eyes first swept over his clothes. Part of him wanted to stand up, to say his name, to watch the color drain from Sterling's face as he realized who he was talking to. It would feel good, satisfying, a perfect reversal. But Noah was watching him. Noah, who was 8 years old, who still believed that the world was mostly fair, who did not yet understand why some people looked at them differently. And there were other passengers watching, too. Watching to see what the black man in the t-shirt would do when confronted by authority. Waiting for him to raise his voice, to confirm whatever assumptions they had already made. Marcus made a choice. All right, he said quietly. Where would you like us to sit? Sterling pointed toward the back. Row 32, near the rear lavatory. The flight attendant will escort you. Sarah's face went pale. Captain, that's not... Miss Mitchell. Sterling's voice cut like a blade. Please escort these passengers to their new seats. Sarah looked at Marcus. There was an apology in her eyes, but her mouth stayed closed. She was on probation. One bad report from the captain could end her career before it started. Marcus gathered their things. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, calm, controlled. He helped Noah out of the seat and took his hand. Come on, buddy. Change of plans. But I liked this seat, Noah said, his voice small. I know, but we're flexible, right? That's what spies do. Noah nodded, but his eyes were wet. They walked through the entire length of the plane, past business class, past the comfortable middle rows, all the way to the back where the seats were narrow and the engine noise was loudest, and the bathroom door opened 2 feet from their faces. Marcus sat down. Noah climbed into the middle seat and pressed against his father's side. Dad? Noah's voice was barely a whisper. Did we do something wrong? Marcus wrapped an arm around his son. No, we didn't do anything wrong. Then why did that man make us move? Marcus looked at his son's face, the confusion, the hurt, the beginning of something that might one day become understanding. He had hoped to protect Noah from this a little longer, but the world did not wait. Sometimes people make decisions based on what they see instead of what they know, Marcus said carefully. That man looked at us and decided something about who we are. He was wrong, but we don't need to prove anything to him. That's not fair. No, it's not. The plane was filling up now. Passengers shuffled past their row, cramming bags into overhead bins, settling into seats. No one looked at them. No one cared about the man and boy stuffed into the back row. Marcus pulled out his phone. The plane was still at the gate, still connected to airport Wi-Fi. He opened his messages and typed quickly. To Diana Walsh. Captain Douglas Sterling, Pacific West Airlines. Pull his complete personnel file, complaint history, performance reviews, everything. Prepare the legal team and have them ready at the destination. I'll send evidence during the flight. Diana's response came within seconds. On it. How bad? Marcus typed back, bad enough. He switched his phone to airplane mode but kept the voice recorder running, hidden in his shirt pocket. Sarah Mitchell appeared in the aisle. She leaned down, her voice low. "Sir, I'm sorry. I want you to know that wasn't right. What he did." Marcus looked at her. "But you didn't say anything." Sarah flinched. The words landed harder than any accusation. "I'm on probation," she said quietly. "If he writes me up, I lose everything. I've worked 3 years to get here." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand. You had a choice to make. You made it." Sarah opened her mouth to say something else, then stopped. There was nothing else to say. She walked away, her shoulders tight with shame. Marcus watched her go. Then he turned to Noah, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder, exhausted by the stress of the confrontation. He kissed his son's forehead. The game had changed now. Sterling thought he had won. He thought he had put a troublesome passenger in his place and restored the natural order of his cabin. He had no idea. Marcus Reed had built a $3 billion empire by being patient, by watching, by gathering information until he understood every weakness in a system. And then, when the moment was right, by acting with absolute precision. Captain Sterling had just handed him all the information he needed. The plane began to taxi toward the runway. The engines roared to life. Marcus closed his eyes and waited. 2 hours into the flight, Noah woke up hungry. "Dad, when do we get food?" Marcus checked his watch. The meal service had started 30 minutes ago. He could see the flight attendants working their way through the cabin with silver carts, handing out trays covered with cloth napkins. The smell of warm bread drifted through the recycled air, but the cart never reached row 32. Marcus watched as the attendants stopped at row 28, collected their supplies, and turned back toward the front of the plane. They did not even glance at the last 4 rows. He pressed the call button. Sarah Mitchell appeared a few minutes later. Her face was tight with tension, and she avoided his eyes. "Sir, how can I help you?" "We haven't received our meal service," Marcus said. "My son is hungry." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry, sir. Captain Sterling has instructed us to prioritize first-class passengers for the premium meals. Economy passengers will receive a snack box once first class has been fully served. We purchased first-class tickets. I understand, but you're seated in economy now, so the meal we paid for goes to someone else." Sarah had no answer. She stood there, caught between the truth and the orders she had been given. Marcus kept his voice low so Noah would not hear. "Did Sterling specifically tell you to skip us?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. "It's okay," Marcus said. "We'll manage." He bought 2 sandwiches from the snack cart with his credit card, $12 each for stale bread and processed cheese. Noah ate without complaint, but Marcus could see the confusion in his son's eyes. The boy was trying to understand a world that did not make sense. Marcus opened his phone and typed another message to Diana, documenting the incident. Time-stamped, detailed. Another piece of evidence for the file that was growing thicker by the hour. 30 minutes later, Captain Sterling emerged from the cockpit. Marcus watched him walk down the aisle. Sterling moved with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. 30 years of seniority, a spotless official record, connections throughout the company. He nodded at passengers he deemed worthy, and ignored those he did not. Then Sterling stopped at the first-class galley and spoke quietly to one of the attendants. The attendant hesitated, glanced around nervously, then handed Sterling a small bottle. Sterling unscrewed the cap and took a long drink. Marcus recognized the bottle. Airline-issued whiskey, the kind they served to passengers, not crew. He watched Sterling take another drink, then slipped the bottle into his jacket pocket and returned to the cockpit. Marcus recorded it all. The turbulence started somewhere over Kansas. The seatbelt sign flashed on, and the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some rough air. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The plane shuddered. Overhead bins rattled. A child somewhere in the middle rows started crying. Noah gripped Marcus's arm. "Dad? It's just bumpy air, buddy. Like a boat on waves. Nothing to worry about." But the turbulence was not the problem. The problem was Greg Holloway. Marcus had noticed him earlier. A large white man in first class, sprawled across his seat with the entitled ease of someone who had never been told no. He had been drinking steadily since takeoff, and now, with the plane shaking, his behavior was becoming erratic. Holloway was the CEO of a logistics company that partnered with the airline. Marcus recognized the name from the acquisition documents, one of Pacific West's biggest corporate accounts, the kind of client that airlines bent over backward to accommodate. When Sarah walked past his row to check on passengers, Holloway reached out and grabbed her wrist. "Hey, sweetheart." His words were slurred. "Sit with me. Keep me company." Sarah tried to pull away, her voice professional but strained. "Sir, I need you to remain seated. We're experiencing turbulence." "I don't care about turbulence." Holloway's grip tightened. "I care about you." "Sir, please let go of my arm." "Come on, don't be like that. You know how much money I spend on this airline?" Sarah's face went pale. She looked around for help, but the other attendants were busy securing the cabin, and Sterling was in the cockpit, probably finishing his whiskey. "Mr. Holloway, I'm asking you to release me." Holloway yanked her closer. "And I'm asking you to be friendly." Marcus was already unbuckling his seatbelt. "Dad?" Noah's voice was scared. "Where are you going?" "Stay here, buddy. Keep your seatbelt on." Marcus moved down the aisle, gripping the overhead bins for balance as the plane shook. Passengers watched him pass, their faces a mixture of curiosity and fear. He reached first class just as Holloway pulled Sarah onto his lap. "Let her go." Marcus's voice cut through the noise of the shaking plane. Calm, controlled, absolute. Holloway looked up, his bloodshot eyes struggling to focus. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm someone who's asking you politely to take your hands off her. This is your one warning." Holloway laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Mind your own business. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of." "Sir." Marcus did not raise his voice. "Release her. Now." Something in his tone made Holloway hesitate. There was no anger in it, no threat, just certainty. The certainty of a man who had faced far worse than a drunk bully on an airplane. Holloway let go. Sarah stumbled backward, her face flushed with humiliation and relief. She looked at Marcus with something close to gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. But Holloway was not finished. "You think you can tell me what to do?" He lurched to his feet, swaying with the turbulence. "Do you know who I am? I'll have you arrested the second we land." Marcus stood his ground. "Sit down." Holloway swung. It was a clumsy punch, telegraphed by alcohol and arrogance. Marcus stepped aside easily, and Holloway's momentum carried him forward. He crashed into the armrest of an empty seat and crumpled to the floor. The cabin went silent except for the drone of the engines. Marcus looked down at Holloway, who was groaning and clutching his ribs. He had not touched the man, had not needed to. Holloway had defeated himself. Then the cockpit door burst open. Sterling emerged like a storm cloud, his face red with fury. His eyes swept the scene. Holloway on the floor, Marcus standing over him, Sarah pressed against the galley wall. "What happened here?" Sterling demanded. Sarah stepped forward. "Captain, Mr. Holloway assaulted me. This passenger intervened to help." "I didn't ask you." Sterling cut her off without looking at her. His attention was fixed on Marcus. "You. What did you do?" "I asked Mr. Holloway to stop harassing your flight attendant. He took a swing at me and fell." "That's not what I see." Sterling's voice was ice. "I see a passenger who left his seat during turbulence, against direct orders, and attacked one of our VIP clients." "That's not what happened," Sarah said. "Captain, I was there. Mr. Holloway grabbed me. Miss Mitchell, one more word and I will write you up for insubordination." Sterling did not take his eyes off Marcus. "Sir, you are a threat to the safety of this aircraft. I am placing you under restraint." Marcus felt the moment crystallize around him. He saw Sterling reach for the zip ties on his belt, saw the other passengers watching, silent, unwilling to interfere, saw Noah, 50 rows back, standing in the aisle with tears streaming down his face. "Dad!" Noah's scream cut through the cabin. "Dad!" Marcus locked eyes with his son. He forced himself to smile, a small, reassuring expression that took more strength than anything he had ever done. "It's okay, Noah. It's okay. Sit down, buddy. I'm fine." Sterling grabbed Marcus's wrists and yanked them behind his back. The zip ties bit into his skin, plastic edges sharp against bone. "You're under restraint for threatening passenger safety," Sterling announced, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "You will remain secured until we land, at which point you will be handed over to law enforcement." Marcus did not resist, did not struggle. He let Sterling push him into the jump seat near the rear galley and secure him to the frame. Noah was sobbing now, fighting against another flight attendant who held him back. "Let me go. That's my dad. He didn't do anything wrong." "Someone control that child," Sterling snapped. Marcus called out, his voice steady despite everything. "Noah! Noah, look at me!" The boy's eyes found his father's face. "I need you to be brave right now. Can you do that for me? I need you to sit in our seat and wait. Everything is going to be okay. I promise." Noah's sobs quieted to hiccups. He let the flight attendant guide him back to row 32, but his eyes never left Marcus. Sterling leaned close to Marcus, his breath sour with whiskey. "You should have stayed in your seat. Should have known your place." Marcus said nothing. Sterling returned to the intercom. His voice filled the cabin, calm and authoritative, as if he had not just assaulted an innocent man. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I want to assure you that the situation is under control. A disruptive passenger has been secured, and there is no further threat to your safety. We will be landing in approximately 90 minutes. Law enforcement will meet the aircraft. Thank you for your patience." Marcus sat in the jump seat, wrists bound, watching his son's small face peer at him from row 32. The boy looked so scared, so confused. Marcus wanted to hold him, to tell him that the world was not always like this, that most people were good. But he could not move, could not reach his son, could only sit there labeled a criminal, while the real criminal walked free in first class and the captain who had orchestrated it all sat in the cockpit drinking whiskey. 20 minutes later, Sarah Mitchell approached the jump seat. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly. She glanced toward the cockpit, making sure Sterling was not watching, then leaned close to Marcus. "He wants me to write a report," she said quietly. "An official incident report stating that you attacked Mr. Holloway and threatened the safety of the flight." Marcus looked at her. "Are you going to write it?" Sarah's eyes glistened. She looked at Marcus, the man who had stepped in to protect her when no one else would. She looked at Noah, the 8-year-old boy sitting alone in the back row, wiping tears from his face with the sleeve of his superhero shirt. Then she looked toward first class, where Sterling was speaking with Holloway, probably coaching him on what to say when they landed. "If I write what he wants, I keep my job," Sarah said. "If I don't, he'll destroy me. 3 years of training, everything I've worked for. I know. It's not fair. I shouldn't have to choose between my career and the truth." Marcus met her eyes. "No, you shouldn't. But here you are, and you have to decide what kind of person you're going to be." Sarah stood there, caught in the impossible space between survival and integrity. Marcus watched the battle play out on her face. Fear against conscience, self-interest against justice. Finally, she straightened her spine. "I won't write a false report." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I can't. He'll retaliate. I know." Sarah took a shaky breath. "But I saw what happened. I was there." If I lie on an official document, I'm not just protecting him, I'm destroying you. I'm traumatizing your son. I'm becoming exactly the kind of person I swore I'd never be. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you, Sarah. Thank me when we land, if I still have a job. She walked away, her shoulders squared with a courage she probably did not feel. 10 minutes later, Sterling emerged from the cockpit. His face was thunderous. Miss Mitchell! His voice carried across the galley. Where is that incident report? I haven't completed it, Captain. Why not? Sarah met his gaze. Because I cannot in good conscience file a report that contradicts what I witnessed. Mr. Holloway assaulted me. Mr. Reed intervened to protect me. I will not write otherwise. Sterling's face contorted with rage. Do you understand what you're doing? Do you have any idea who Greg Holloway is? How much money his company brings to this airline? I understand perfectly, sir. Then understand this. Sterling stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. When we land, you're finished. Not just here, everywhere. I have 30 years of connections in this industry. You will never work as a flight attendant again. Sarah's voice wavered, but held. That may be true, but at least I'll be able to sleep at night. Sterling turned away in disgust. He grabbed a pen and a blank report form from the galley station. Fine. If you won't do your job, I'll do it myself. He scrawled across the page, filling in the report with his own version of events. Marcus Reed. Violent passenger. Unprovoked attack on VIP client. Threat to aircraft safety. Recommend criminal charges upon landing. Then Sterling picked up the intercom phone and contacted air traffic control. This is Pacific West Flight 847 requesting law enforcement presence upon arrival. We have a passenger in custody who posed a threat to flight safety. Recommend immediate arrest upon deplaning. Marcus listened to every word, recorded every word. His phone was still in his pocket, still capturing everything through the fabric of his shirt. Sterling hung up and turned to face him, triumph gleaming in his eyes. 1 hour, the captain said. 1 hour, and you'll be in handcuffs. Real ones this time. Let's see how smug you are then. Marcus looked at him calmly. Are you finished? Sterling frowned. The reaction was not what he expected. What? I asked if you're finished, because you should probably get back to the cockpit, unless you want to add dereliction of duty to your list of problems today. Sterling's face twisted with confusion and anger. He was not used to defiance, not used to a man in zip ties speaking to him as an equal. You're insane, Sterling spat. Absolutely insane. He stormed back to the cockpit and slammed the door. Marcus sat in silence. His wrists ached from the plastic ties. His shoulders burned from the awkward position, but his mind was clear. 1 hour. In 1 hour, they would land. In 1 hour, Sterling would discover that the man he had humiliated, restrained, and slandered was the same man who now owned every piece of his career. Diana had received all the evidence, the recordings, the photographs, the documentation of every violation. She would have the legal team ready, the board members notified, the media prepared. Sterling thought he was walking Marcus into a trap. He had no idea he was walking into one himself. Marcus looked down the aisle toward row 32. Noah had stopped crying. The boy sat pressed against the window, watching his father with wide, trusting eyes. Marcus mouthed the words, I love you. Noah mouthed back, I love you too, Dad. And Marcus waited. The plane touched down at exactly 5:17 in the afternoon. Marcus felt the wheels hit the runway, felt the engines reverse thrust, felt the aircraft slow to taxiing speed. His wrists had gone numb from the zip ties. His shoulders ached from hours of sitting in the same position. But none of that mattered now. Sterling's voice came over the intercom one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles. Please remain seated until we reach the gate. Law enforcement will be boarding the aircraft to handle a security matter. We appreciate your patience. The captain sounded pleased with himself, triumphant even. Marcus watched through the small window of the rear galley as the plane approached the gate. He could see the flashing lights before they even stopped moving. Police cars, black SUVs, a cluster of people in suits standing on the tarmac. Sterling emerged from the cockpit, straightening his tie and smoothing his silver hair. He glanced at Marcus with a thin smile. "End of the line," Sterling said. "I hope you enjoyed your flight." Marcus said nothing. He simply watched. The plane stopped. The jet bridge connected. The door opened. Sterling stepped out first, his chest puffed with authority. He raised his hand to the officers waiting outside. "Gentlemen, the passenger is restrained in the rear galley. I'll need you to—" He stopped. The police officers were not looking at him, neither were the men in suits. They were all looking past him, toward the interior of the plane. A woman stepped forward from the group. Diana Walsh. She wore a black suit and carried a thick folder under her arm. Her expression was unreadable. "Captain Douglas Sterling?" Her voice was crisp and professional. Sterling frowned. "Yes, I'm the captain. What's going on here?" Diana did not answer him. Instead, she turned toward the plane and raised her voice. "Mr. Marcus Reed, could you please come forward?" A police officer boarded the aircraft. He walked past first class, past business class, past the rows of passengers craning their necks to see what was happening. He reached the rear galley and pulled out a knife. "Sir, hold still." One quick motion and the zip ties fell away. Marcus rubbed his wrists. The skin was raw and red, marked with deep grooves from the plastic. He stood slowly, letting the blood flow back into his hands. Then Noah was there. The boy had been waiting in the aisle, held back by another attendant. But the moment Marcus was free, he broke away and ran. He crashed into his father's arms with a force that nearly knocked Marcus backward. "Dad!" Noah's voice was muffled against Marcus's chest. "Dad, I was so scared." Marcus held his son tight. He pressed his face into Noah's hair and breathed. For a long moment, nothing else existed. Not Sterling, not the police, not the $3 billion or the airline or any of it. Just his son, safe, in his arms. "I know, buddy, I know. It's over now." They walked together toward the front of the plane. Marcus kept one arm around Noah's shoulders. Passengers watched them pass in silence. Some looked confused. Others looked ashamed, perhaps recognizing that they had watched an innocent man be bound and humiliated without saying a word. Marcus stepped off the jet bridge and onto the tarmac. Sterling was standing where Diana had stopped him, his face a mask of confusion. Beside him, two police officers waited with their hands resting on their belts. "What is the meaning of this?" Sterling demanded. "I called for law enforcement to arrest that man. He attacked a passenger. Diana opened her folder. "Captain Sterling, we have your incident report right here. Quite detailed. You allege that Mr. Reed physically assaulted a VIP passenger named Greg Holloway and posed a threat to flight safety." "That's correct. I witnessed the whole thing." "Interesting." Diana pulled a tablet from her bag and tapped the screen. "Because we have a different account of events." A recording played. Sterling's voice, captured through the fabric of Marcus's shirt. "You should have stayed in your seat. Should have known your place." Sterling's face went white. Diana tapped again. Another recording. Sterling ordering Sarah to skip Marcus and Noah for meal service. Sterling threatening Sarah's career. Sterling filing his false report while dictating it aloud. Then video. Grainy but clear. Sterling in the galley, drinking from an airline whiskey bottle. Greg Holloway grabbing Sarah, pulling her onto his lap. Marcus stepping in, calm and controlled. Holloway swinging and missing, Holloway falling on his own. "Where did you get this?" Sterling's voice cracked. This is inadmissible. This is—" Diana cut him off. "This evidence was provided by Mr. Marcus Reed." She turned to face Sterling fully. "The new owner of Pacific West Airlines, as of 9 o'clock this morning." The color drained completely from Sterling's face. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Marcus stepped forward. He was still wearing the same faded t-shirt from that morning. His wrists were still marked with red grooves. He looked exactly like what Sterling had seen, a black man in casual clothes traveling with his son. "No," Sterling whispered. "That's impossible. You're just what?" Marcus's voice was quiet. A black father in a t-shirt? Someone who couldn't possibly afford a first-class seat? Someone who doesn't belong in luxury? Sterling shook his head frantically. "Mr. Reed, I had no idea. If I had known who you were, I never would have—" "That's exactly the problem." Marcus stepped closer and Sterling instinctively stepped back. "You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with basic human dignity. You shouldn't need to know my net worth to offer me the seat I paid for. You looked at me and my son, and you decided we didn't belong. Not because of anything we did, because of what we looked like." Sterling had no response. 30 years of authority, and he had nothing to say. Diana spoke again, her voice carrying across the tarmac. "Captain Douglas Sterling, you are being charged with discrimination against a passenger, filing a false report with air traffic control, unlawful restraint, consuming alcohol while on duty, and failure to report sexual harassment by a passenger. Your employment with Pacific West Airlines is terminated effective immediately, and your pilot's license will be reviewed by the FAA pending investigation." 2 officers stepped forward. One of them held a pair of zip ties, the same kind Sterling had used on Marcus. "Turn around, sir. Hands behind your back." Sterling's face contorted. "You can't do this. I have 30 years of experience. 30 years. I know people. I'll fight this. The zip ties clicked shut around his wrists. As the officers led Sterling away, Marcus did not watch. He was kneeling on the tarmac, eye level with Noah, wiping the last traces of tears from his son's face. Behind them, Greg Holloway was escorted off the plane in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled and his face red with fury and fear. Sexual assault charges, graft charges. His company's partnership with the airline would be terminated within the week, and his board would remove him within the month. Sarah Mitchell was the last to exit the aircraft. She walked slowly down the jet bridge, her face pale and uncertain. She had defied a captain. She had refused to file a false report. She had risked her entire career for a stranger. Marcus stood and walked toward her. "Miss Mitchell." Sarah's eyes were wet. "Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up sooner. When he first made you move, I should have—" "You spoke up when it mattered most." Marcus's voice was gentle. "You chose the truth when lying would have been easier. That took courage." Sarah shook her head. "I was scared the whole time. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing despite it." Marcus glanced at Diana, who stepped forward with a document in her hand. "Miss Mitchell," Diana said, "Mr. Reed would like to offer you a position, Director of Customer Experience. You would oversee the implementation of new service standards across the entire airline, training programs, complaint procedures, employee protections." Sarah stared at the document. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. "You showed me who you are today," Marcus said. "I want people like you building the culture of this company. What do you say?" Sarah took a shaky breath. Then she nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes. Yes, I'd be honored." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Marcus restructured Pacific West Airlines from the ground up, new hiring protocols that prioritized character alongside competence, a transparent complaint system where reports could not be buried or ignored, mandatory training on discrimination and harassment, clear policies protecting crew members from abusive passengers regardless of how much money those passengers spent. The story made national news. Video clips went viral. Think pieces were written about systemic bias and corporate accountability. Sterling became a cautionary tale, and Marcus became something he never wanted to be, a symbol. But symbols faded. What mattered was the work. 6 months later, Marcus and Noah boarded a plane. It was the first flight under the airline's new branding. New colors, new logo, new uniforms. The same commitment to service that Marcus demanded of every company he owned. They walked through the jet bridge together. Noah's hand was in his father's, just like it had been 6 months ago. But this time, the boy was smiling. They settled into seats 1A and 1B. The leather was soft. The cabin was quiet. A flight attendant approached, led cabin crew according to the badge on her lapel. It was Sarah Mitchell. She looked different now, confident, at ease. "Welcome back, Mr. Reed," she smiled warmly. "Hi, Noah." She placed 2 small cups of ice cream on their tray tables. Noah's eyes lit up. "Dad, look!" Marcus laughed. "What do you say?" "Thank you, Miss Sarah." Sarah winked at him, then moved on to greet other passengers. Noah took a bite of his ice cream, then looked up at his father. "Dad, we don't have to change seats this time, right?" Marcus ruffled his son's hair. "No, buddy. This time, nobody has to change seats because of how they look." The engines hummed to life. The plane began to taxi. Noah pressed his face to the window as they lifted off, watching the city shrink beneath them, watching the clouds grow closer until they were surrounded by white. Marcus watched his son. He had not built his empire to sit in seat 1A. He had not acquired an airline to prove a point or to exact revenge. He had done it so that children like Noah might grow up in a world slightly more fair than the one Marcus had known. A world where a boy in a superhero t-shirt could sit wherever his ticket said, and no one would question whether he belonged. It was a small thing. One airline, one set of policies, one flight at a time. But small things added up. Marcus knew that better than anyone. The plane climbed higher, chasing the sun toward the horizon. Noah turned from the window, ice cream on his chin, and grinned at his father. Marcus smiled back. This was enough. For now, this was enough.